Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads with my partner in crime, my partner in thrive, Mr. Shawn Francis. I am Brian Altunian, and today we're going to be talking about what else? The holidays here on Just Two Dads. Welcome, everybody. It is our holiday. I know I sound weird. I'm actually fixing technology as on the fly. Here we go. We're in the holiday season, and already I'm falling behind. Isn't that what happens?
Sounds normal to me.
It does. Okay, good. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a note from Sean Hall in Hawaii about how we're echoing or something's going on. Anyways, we just want to welcome everybody who's catching us live on Facebook. If you are, welcome. Please feel free to put something in the comments. Say hello and ask us a question if you want throughout this podcast. I'd love to put your comments up here, and we'd love to interact with people. So please do that. If you're not catching us live and you're catching us on the after the fact, then you catch us on our YouTube channel at We Are Just Two Dads. Search that We Are Just Two Dads on YouTube. Want to welcome everybody who's listening on podcast, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you catch podcasts. Welcome. We're glad to have you here, and I wish we could interact with you. But again, please feel free. Oh, this is you're not catching us live. By the way, welcome to everybody at WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Hello, family down there. If you're not catching us on video, you're going to miss out. It's the holiday. First of all, red and green. This is the only thing I could get that was somewhat festive. I was talking to my friend Tammy earlier today, and I said, I have no holiday decorations up. So this is as close as I'm going to get. You ready, Sean? This is as close as I'm going to get. There it is. Okay. I'm festive now. I'm now
For
festive.
those of you that don't have video, Brian has Christmas lights around his neck that are lit, and he looks like the festive ghost of Christmas present.
There you go. There you go. I'm excited about today. I'm excited about the holiday season, and I'm excited about our conversation as we end 2021 and look forward to 2022. There is Joe Quinones, my oldest daughter, saying hello. So hi, Joe. Good to see you, babe. I have not spoken to Jordan today, so this is our interaction for right now. He's so cute. Anyways, Shawn Francis, I ask you all the time how you're feeling today, and I know you're feeling blessed, but are you feeling festive? How are you today?
I am feeling festive, but I find myself with maybe even a little more so than usual, one foot in the present and another in the future. I think I was taking some notes earlier. I don't remember what I was doing, something where I had to write down the date, and as I wrote down 2022, you know what? It was a post that I put on social media. I'm talking about the business and our expansion going into the new year, and as I looked at the year 2022, it just seemed like a long time from anywhere. Like I should be in a flying car. I should, it's just kind of weird to really to look at. But I am as thankful and as ever, maybe even a little more so. This is just falls into the rambling department, as you know, Brian, and anyone that follows me on social media knows. We have a guava tree in our backyard, and it still blows me away being from the Virgin Islands than having a guava tree in your yard in LA, right? And it doesn't produce every year, and I tend to get philosophical about an ant crawling on the ground. What does that mean? What does it represent? But this tree does not bear or produce guavas every year. The first year we moved in to the house that we bought, it produced like literally 2 or 3. My aunt was visiting from St. Croix, and I was just like, look. And it's like a pea-sized guava, right? The next year it produced none. The following year, because it usually would produce in the fall, there was a bunch of them. And I found myself getting really protected of them because squirrels were eating them, going after them big time. And so the dogs and I were kind of guarding the tree. And then one day I was sitting at my desk in my office, and I looked up at the top of the tree, and there's some of them that even with the picker that allows me to get 20 feet up, some of them I can't get to. And I'm like, why am I worrying about that which I really can't control? And as soon as I kind of said that and was like, let the squirrels get what they can get, within a matter of probably a week, we had trouble keeping up with what the tree produced. My wife made guava bread. We had guava smoothies. We had guava martinis.
Guava paste. Guava jelly. Guava jam.
Everything. Yeah, all hilarious. Of that. And so I got to thinking, it just said something about an abundant mindset. So anyway, that's my long-winded way of saying, as appreciative as I usually am, I'm even more so now because the tree is producing again, and I'm looking at it as we speak.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. I did see the picture that you posted on social media, the guavas in your hand. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley here in California, so I used to see guava trees all the time. I love guavas right off a tree. I'm not sure that it's a holiday food per se. I don't know. Is it in the Virgin Islands?
It is. It is in the Virgin Islands because
interesting.
What we make is we have these tarts, right? And when you think of tart, you think of something small, right? But it's like a pie sized with a crust, and tarts are usually in the flavor of coconut, guava berry, which is not to be confused with guava, pineapple, or guava itself. And growing up, in St. Thomas, my aunt Corliss on St. Croix had a guava tree in her yard, and the house that she has, or that she had, she's since passed on, God rest her soul. Her parents had that house first, and it's like, I don't know, probably close to 100 years old. And so there's old style open windows where you just literally push the windows open, and so the entire house would smell like guavas. So when I smell them, it evokes a great memory and a great time as a kid.
Well, I mean, it's a good segue into kind of what we want to, talk about today on our show. We've had a little stretch here where we have not had guests, so it's just been Shawn and I talking. So for those of you who are catching us for the first time, welcome. We'll talk about what we're doing here. For those who have caught us the last few episodes, maybe you're like, I don't want to hear these two. I don't want to hear these two guys just chatting and ramble again. But here's what we do. So for those of you who are new to the show, Shawn and I have been involved in a financial services business for quite some time. And we started to look at the special needs community because we're both fathers of children who have been through the special needs process. So some people call them differently abled, some say medically complex. We don't mean to offend anybody in how we define, the need, but the reality is there are people who have learning disabilities. There are people who are on, like my daughter, people on the autism spectrum, like Shawn's son. There are people who deal with medically complex issues, whether it's through birth or some other natural cause, or even by accident. People are part of this community, and one of the things that we've decided that we wanted to do was want to make sure that every community was served in the world of financial services. So in finance, a lot of folks, there's a lot of information available around financial tools, financial vehicles. And yet as much as we have available to us in information via the internet, we're more uninformed today than any other time. And so Shawn and I were committed to serving the special needs community in the area of finances. And it turned into we're having so many phenomenal conversations with who we call warriors that service the special needs community, whether they're attorneys that do special needs trusts, or attorneys that are IEP advocates, or coaches for special needs families, a variety of so many different folks. And we thought, we've got to find a platform where we can have those folks on here and discuss and create an audience and create a web. I always use gesture with my hands, putting them together. I always say we try to combine a broad resource for folks to be able to reach the people who are serving this community. So for those who are catching us, again, welcome. If you're brand new to the show, know that our commitment, we really started this conversation. Now, Shawn and I would talk about this stuff all the time. And Jordan, my oldest daughter, we would talk about how we would approach the special needs community. And then because we're dads, we were sharing information with each other about how dads approach this, how dads often feel left out of the conversation, how dads, moms are true, warrior parents when it comes to the special needs community. And sometimes dads are as well. And sometimes dads do other things that support the family, but as far as just having discussions about where we are, how we feel personally, what motivates us, what inspires us, how we can contribute, that's where we found an opportunity to have a discussion. And we literally were just two dads having a conversation. And when we came to decide how are we going to name this podcast, we're like, I don't know, we're just who's going to listen to us? We're just two dads. We don't know what we're not having a specialty in this area. We're just experiencing it. And we're like, we're just two dads. So really, we're just three dads because our producer in Hawaii, Shawn Hall, also has family that have been impacted by this special needs community. And Shawn Hall, I'm just going to say a special shout out to you, my friend. Just know that we love you so much. We support you. Shawn has suffered a tragedy in his family recently, and just know how much we care for you and your family, and we send you love, especially during the holiday season here now, more than ever. Anyways, we love you, buddy, and we care for you, and know that you are surrounded by people who care for you, care about you. So
most definitely,
special message of love out there to you. And we always say in this community, if people approach this community with empathy and love, the world will be a different place. And again, now more than ever, especially around the holiday time, especially when we're dealing with, listen, we have a new resurgence of COVID, and that's creating complications. And we want to make sure that everybody knows that, as we say, Shawn says all the time as we wrap up the show, people need to be seen, they need to be heard, they want to be understood, they want to be gotten, they want to be, that idea of being seen is so significant. And man, during the holidays, that's when a lot of people feel lonely, believe it or not. When there's all this festivity going on, some people feel lonely, they feel alone, they feel, often apart if they're away from their family. I have this unusual situation right now. My daughter Jordan's in upstate New York. My other daughter Gabby's in Israel teaching English to students. My son Blake is in town, thankfully, and so we have some other family. But my family's sort of spread out. I have a brother in Arizona. I have another brother in Texas. I've got families spread out. It used to be a time when our families all came together, and so this conversation today is really about how does the holiday impact, what are the holiday traditions you've engaged in, or, what do you love about the holidays? What do you dislike about the holidays? And for our special needs families, and again, those families that have both been impacted by needs of their family member and, or, a sense of isolation because of COVID now during the holidays. How is that impacted, and what's the holiday situation look like for you? Is this a good time to reflect? Is this a time for you to be grateful and feel good and feel the love of family, or are you struggling? And if that's the case, we want to talk through those issues too, because we acknowledge that does happen, and we want people to not feel alone and not feel forgotten or without. And so again, that was a very long ramble to say I love the idea that in the islands, guava is a holiday fruit. What other traditions, if you don't mind me asking, Shawn, like what other things were the thing for you and back in the islands that also that you carry on here? And what is your wife, Laura, what are some of the traditions that she has that become part of your family? And, how's that look for you?
Well, it's interesting you asked that because it differs. One of the things that takes place, especially from a special needs standpoint, Elijah he eats what he eats. There's not a ton of variation. Many people, if you have a loved one with special needs, especially with autism, from a sensory standpoint, you can relate to that. And he eats what he eats kind of like on his own. To sit down and eat at the table as a family, that takes place with his inclusion more often if we go out to eat than otherwise. And we've only been out to eat once during the pandemic, when one of the kids, birthdays, we all went out and everybody's masked up and everything. And that was the one instance where that took place. And he really, misses that. So when it comes to Thanksgiving or Christmas, what he'll do is everyone will gather, hold hands, and he will usually lead everyone in prayer. He likes doing that. He'll do that.
Love
and
that.
he repeats the prayer that I was taught by my grandmother growing up. God is good and God is great. We thank Him for our food. By His hands we must be fed. Give us, Lord, our daily bread. Amen. And when he says that, he'll tend to say it and kind of run the words together. But he'll say it and pretty much, and you know how he's very official. He'll say it and kind of like, and, and thank you for our food. Amen. And as if kind of like that is all. I'm done. And then he'll leave. Go about his business. But he likes that. He likes the idea of opening gifts. Maybe even more so than the gifts themselves, because again, when it comes to sensory and tactile things, the ripping open the package and everything, he really enjoys that. And so it's always a challenge when we're trying to figure out, well, what do we get him? Like the one thing I try not to procrastinate. I saw a post recently that said that procrastination is almost like, how was it worded? But essentially equating procrastination with ego, having the audacity to think that, tomorrow is guaranteed and that you're sort of spiting the gift that God has given you. And so
I don't know what procrastination means. I'll look it up later.
Okay. Well, you know what? I hate to say it, but you're looking at it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a daily fight not to do it. And I'm saying that to lead into, you can see how I'm like, buffering my own story here, is that the one thing I've always thought is where I always figure, well, what should we get him? Because you go back and forth between, oh, he doesn't do this, he or she doesn't do that, so you're not going to try. You go between that and, well, let's try, let's see. He doesn't know how to ride a bike. And if we, buy one and you take the time, he may take to it and ride the bike. He may be like, no, that, I don't get that. I think once he learns, he would enjoy it. So, that's been something that we've talked about, as well. As far as traditions in the Caribbean, in the Caribbean, each island is a little different in terms of when it takes place, but you have Carnival, right? And on St. Thomas, it takes place in April. On St. Croix, it's referred to as the Christmas festival. And so it takes place in December between Christmas and Three Kings. So you have what's called like a village where there are a bunch of different booths, and the booth is not like just like a table with a tent. It is an actual wooden structure that is built with like an entrance and a countertop and everything like that, and each one serves a different food. And then in the center of it all, you may have a place where bands perform, and they serve local vendors have local food and everything. And then there's a parade and all that kind of stuff. So that's part of that tradition. The other tradition that is common for us, with my wife Laura being Mexican American, is the creation and consumption of tamales.
Tamales. I was hoping that you were going to say that. I'll be over. I'm sorry. When are you making those?
Actually, my mother-in-law surprises we were going to make them all together and have like a makeshift thing here at the house.
Yeah.
But my mother-in-law being the kind of giver that she is, she just like, oh, they're ready. Come pick them up.
Oh my gosh. That's not, no, I can't. That's unless you give me the address. That doesn't work for me. I need to be, I will be
you already have it. You can come over for stuff.
No, I mean to Mom's address. I was going to go to Mom's, get right from the source. Okay. I don't want to take out of your mouths. That's not fair.
No, that's more than fine. Though. But he still hasn't had any of. He hasn't tried that. But anything that involves like that's kind of craft related and making things, he'll take to that. Like one thing we did this year that was the brainchild of the second oldest of the girls, Vanessa, was the idea of everybody making an ornament for the tree.
Yeah,
so
I like that idea.
Yeah, so in addition to the ornaments that we have and everything, we got she got little balls and different things that to fill it with, and so everyone made an ornament of their own. So that was a new tradition. Yeah, it was, and I think hopefully that's something that we'll continue to do. The other thing that we do, and Elijah hasn't participated in this because it involves obviously you're sitting looking at a movie from beginning to end. The only time he'll really literally do that is when we get to the theater, which is not so much of that being done now, but we tend to look at It's a Wonderful Life
Oh, my
every
favorite.
year.
Yeah,
Always
me
get
too.
something out of that. Yeah,
Love that.
always get something out of that.
It's interesting, right? I find every time I watch that movie, I find something different that I didn't know.
Always,
Right.
always.
If I told you what I realized this year for the first time, and I don't know why it strikes me. So I probably have to do a little deep digging and maybe some therapy. But I noticed that this is based, obviously it's black and white picture. It was done during the in the 50s, early 50s, I think.
40s.
Is it 40s? Oh my gosh, It's a Wonderful Life in the 40s.
Yeah.
How they talked to each other. There's a couple of scenes where they actually call each other and say, "Oh, you idiot." I was like, "Oh, you idiot." I don't remember that being, something that was so prolific back in the day, but apparently it was okay to call each other, family members and whatnot, "You idiot." I think that, I just thought that struck me this year. And again, not sure what that means, what I have to look into to figure out why that was the thing that stuck out to me about It's a Wonderful Life this year.
Well, it always says something about us more so than it does
for sure.
The film or the book.
Yes,
and for me, what I learned last year that I can't believe I didn't catch it before is if you, in the very beginning, you see 3 stars and this in the sky.
Talking.
Right, and they're talking, and they represent conversation amongst angels, right?
Right.
And they're saying, our next assignment is a man by the name of George Bailey.
Yeah.
Oh, really? He needs our help. Let's get Clarence on it. And they're like, Clarence? I'm like, why him? Because he's someone hasn't earned his wings yet. That alone speaks to the possibility of anybody, special needs or not, right? And they're like, well, we'll give him a chance. And so they're telling the story. So they show George Bailey's progression through life and how people have come to depend on him. He's just being who he is. Doesn't realize, when he's at the end of his rope. Until Clarence, you said, as they begin though, they say, there's a man on earth. He needs our help desperately. And they're like, oh my gosh, is he in trouble? Is his life in danger? And they're like, it's worse. He's lost hope.
Yeah.
And I get chills just saying that. How many people do you think have lost hope?
Yeah.
And they're like, when I hear that, I can almost cry. I'm just like, oh, he's lost hope. That's everybody. The best thing, one of the best places you could ever be in life is not Bora Bora, not anywhere in the Caribbean, including the Virgin Islands. I mean, those are great places to be. But before any of that, any exotic locale, the best place you could ever be is in somebody's prayers.
Look at you.
It really is. It is.
Yeah.
And that's and when you look at that and you're just like, oh, for someone to have stopped and thought about me and included me in their prayers, you don't even need to be a believer in any religion, any deity, anything greater than yourself per se. Let that be your own thing. But the idea that someone does believe in something greater than themselves and they thought enough to have you in their prayers, to wish the best for you and yours, to what they see and believe to be the highest source possible, whether you call him Jah, Yahweh, whoever, right?
Yeah.
That is that is the nicest thing one can ever do for anybody. That's
interesting. That's a really good, first of all, I've never heard that before. So that is beautiful. I find reflecting on that film just for a little bit, because it interacts with the work that we do. First of all, you're right. It was 1946. So that was 1946 when that movie came out. I don't know how much earlier it was that movie was written. To think about, and it came out World War II, right after the Depression, and in a way it pulled the U.S. out of the Depression. But I can understand this idea of poverty and that, the difference between those that had and had not. Around the Depression. And you can see a little bit of that in the discussion about, Mr. Potter and Potter's Field versus, what the building and loan was doing. So, this concept of overcoming poverty, and that in the life where he's reflecting on what his life would be like if he was not alive, you know that there's a lot of debauchery in that town, and it's, you know, it's a bars and dance halls and strip clubs, if you will, although they don't say strip clubs, but you know, it's sort of like, you know, that was what people resorted to. And I'm sure that was what people were feeling during the Depression when they couldn't find jobs and they couldn't, you know, they couldn't get anywhere, a lack of hope. And so the idea that movie was written at a time when, you know, when what was pulling us out of that was the war and this, you know, sense of U.S., you know, nationalism, if you will, and fighting against, you know, a common enemy. I find that to be an interesting idea, and that the balance between, you know, really what the banks were doing and what the banks were seeking out. So if you think about it, 1946, that was at the very beginning of the baby boomer. Literally, it was the beginning of the baby boomer generation. The baby boomer, for those that don't know, were people who were born between 1946 and 1964, that 18 years in that period of time. You and I both are part of the tail end of that baby boomer generation. So, you know, that was coming out of the war, where what pulled us forth was hope, where what pulled the country to the next level was opportunity, possibility, you know, hope. And so it's amazing that you point out that the beginning of that is, you know, is his life in danger? No, it's worse. He's lost hope. I'm sure for a lot of people, I think it's why it's become such a regular holiday tradition, because I think oftentimes still today, here we are, 2021, you guys, it was 75 years ago that movie came out, 75 years ago. And still during the holidays, there are people who need to be reminded that, you know, the world would be a lot worse off if you were not here. And that hope is the one thing that we can, you know, restore with one another. I think that's a powerful, powerful message. I think it's that theme, even if people can't articulate it as they watch it, it is the thing that brings us back to see it every year, and why it is so powerful. And, you know, again, when you see what the bank, you know, what the bank represents versus what a community where everybody's uplifting each other, the difference between, which I would say, some people would say, is what a credit union looks like, right? A credit union is made up of a community of people who have like backgrounds.
Absolutely.
Right. And so the difference between the traditional banks, that hasn't changed in 75 years, where the traditional banks are.
No. And there's always a need for a village, and the village is only as strong as the people. And at the end of the day, we need each other.
What I find fascinating as we're talking about this is, if you think about this, I mean, Mr. Potter was in a wheelchair. I don't know if they actually.
I never thought about that part. Yeah.
Right. And then I don't know if they ever say what his affliction was.
Not only did they not, but I don't think Lionel Barrymore was in a wheelchair in real life. I don't know what made them do that for that story. That's interesting, because and it illustrates something else. Now you're pointing out something that I've never thought of. I'm like, wait a minute, Mr. Potter was a member of the special needs community. And what it says is that at the end of the day, people are people, and we need to judge them by the content, or lack thereof, of their character. And in his case, there was a big lack.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, George Bailey was also a member of the special needs community because he was,
because of his ear,
partially deaf, right? From being slapped in the ear by the druggist, right?
Yeah. No, it wasn't from that. It was from saving his brother, Peter.
That's correct. You're right. Right.
So not only, I never thought of that either. So not only was George a member of the special needs community, but he was a member of the special needs community doing what he did naturally, giving of himself,
saving people.
Yeah.
And thinking of somebody else and somebody else's need at the time. And then again, you're right. The druggist just exacerbated the problem, which, by the way, would make him really qualified to go to serve in the armed forces, right? And so,
and he saves a life again.
Right. Saves this woman's life from getting
two lives. Saves the life of the woman, and then saves the life of the druggist. He's like,
for sure. I'm
gonna watch the movie right now. I gotta go.
I'm telling you, I think if you haven't seen it again this year, people, you should, and really like pay attention to some of the details. And I think the other thing is that, you know, we have hopes and dreams, all of us, right? And at some point in our lives, even not, maybe it's unknowingly, but some people people are in the habit of crushing others' dreams. And I don't know why that's a thing. Maybe it's just out of jealousy or out of just, thinking that, well, I don't have them. And so I'd rather, you not, exceed my perception of the world or succeed. Unfortunately, I think we're used to having our dreams crushed. And I look at this from the perspective of, of that movie and of George Bailey, and how many times he had a dream, and how, for those of us who have experienced in some way a bit of that, where we felt our dreams were crushed at one point or another, I think we relate to that. Like, I feel for him when he sacrifices his going away, when he sacrifices going on his honeymoon, and he gives of himself in order to do the right thing, in order to do the thing that ultimately serves so many. That movie is about so much self-sacrifice, which, by the way, I think parents of special needs children do this a lot. We tend to sacrifice certain things that we had planned, or our lives look completely different than what we had originally thought it was going to be once we serve our children who need extra help. And I think that that's an important thing for people to understand, again, that you're not alone, that there's a community of people here that, in our community that have been there, that have gone through that, you sense that you're not alone, and that we support and love you, right? And want you to feel, because at the end, right, the man is truly wealthy who has friends, right? That's the ultimate, that's the ultimate kind of exclamation point on the whole movie, is that, he who has friends will always be wealthy, right? It's sort of like, right. And that's made up by the people who, you constantly give to, and you give of yourself, and you share, a part of your life that will have an impact on other people. It really is a powerful message. And to think that was 75 years ago, and we still need to learn that. We still need to learn that it's
message. Like the whole thought is, the saying, and you've heard me repeat it so many times, from the great Muhammad Ali, which is that service to others is the rent you pay for your room in heaven. And that's the theme of like the entire movie. And when it comes to the special needs community, what you're talking about is, service is the rent you pay on earth for your room in heaven. And when it comes to the special needs community, the service is needed even more, even if it just means, a little more acknowledgement, whether it's something that's that simple, being treated like a person, versus something that's formal, something that's providing therapy or respite or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, I think, And again, it's interesting that this comes up during the holidays, right? As we're gathering with our families and remembering what it is that's important in our lives and what it is that we are committed to. And I love this. This is a great thing that it comes at the end of the year. Obviously, we could do this at any time, but as we wrap up, 2021 and look to what we want to do in 2022, this period of reflection around the holidays and these kinds of themes and the idea of, hope and support and love and empathy and just, again, shaking, sort of embracing, not shaking, but embracing our community and our loved ones. It gives us a chance to sort of reflect on, did we do that all year? Have we been doing that all year? Where have we missed out on opportunities to do that? Can we do it better next year? Right. Can we do more next year? Can we get to that? And by the way, just so everybody knows, these are the kinds of conversations that Shawn and I used to have before we had a podcast. And we would just have these philosophical conversations about stuff and then hang up the phone. One of us would cry, both of us at some point. And then we hang up the phone and be like, we got it. I have a new mission. I have a new thing that I want to commit to. So I love the fact that we're doing this, because we did not plan on having a conversation about, about It's a Wonderful Life. But the reality is, it's a great time to be talking about it. Thank you, Lori, for your comment. And, for people who are commenting on this, if it's not part of your holiday tradition, maybe it's something that you want to consider looking at. Like where are we, where are we contributing to our community, and where can we do better, and where can we do more, and realize that our dreams are achievable, right? They may look a little bit different once we've accomplished, than what we originally had planned, but it's generally no less than, right? I often find that people like, oh, I had planned on doing this, and I threw it out to God, or I threw it out to the universe. And I had an idea of what I wanted my life to look like. And it didn't look exactly like I had pictured, but it actually resulted in something even greater or even better. I've heard so many of those stories. I think the limitation is a lot of people don't make that just don't throw it out in the world. And listen, we're not naive enough to think, oh, you just say it and this happens. It's the idea of with intentionality and, constantly putting your goals and your dreams in front of you and speaking them into existence. Good. Yeah, Tammy, I agree. Right. Tammy and I were having a conversation earlier today about, how we make a difference in other people's lives. And at the end of the day, that's really what this is all about, right? How do we make a difference in other people's lives? I think about that on a regular basis if I'm doing something and I'm like, am I making a difference in someone's life? Then I'm on the right path. I'm on the right track.
And I'm sorry not to cut you off.
Good.
Something just hit me. We could think about, we can also complicate the idea and the notion of making a difference in other people's lives. Because the mastery of complication is part of the human condition. Unfortunately, that's just something that we do. We're just like, ooh, how do I do this? How do I just hold on a second. If it's important enough, you could just do it, especially if nobody's going to get burned or stabbed in the process. You can figure it out. Just go do it, especially if it makes a difference. And it brings to mind, we're on this show, we will promote people that we think are making a difference, especially people in, that we have as guests, or people in our own community that we know. Working in financial services, we've had some mentorship with a gentleman by the name of Ed Milet. Ed has a podcast, and the most recent episode, he has Kurt Warner as his guest. And if you follow football, that Kurt Warner went from bagging groceries to, literally from bagging groceries to leading the Rams, who were then in St. Louis, to 2 Super Bowls in the 90s. And he was the MVP of those Super Bowls. So I knew that about him. I then learned that he and his wife had a large family, a lot of kids, something I can relate to. I knew that one of his sons, who is now an adult, was a child with special needs. And I knew recently, within the last maybe 2 or 3 years, that he and his wife started a foundation where what they do is build communities where young adults with special needs can live independently, and that their dream and vision is to do this all across the country, right? What I did not know is that she had children when he met her, and the child who has special needs has his special needs by way of a catastrophic injury, because supposedly the story is that he was dropped by his biological father when he was months old.
Oh my gosh.
Kurt Warner met her and took these kids in as his own. Something else that I can relate to. But in looking at, and so I always thought, why haven't they made a movie about this guy's life? Well, they finally did. It's out. But one of the things that he talked about in the interview, and they were just talking about, his faith and everything, what he and his family do when they go out to eat, they scan the room very carefully and will pick someone or a group of people at a table whose meal they wish to pay for. And what he will do is even ask the kids, okay, so you pick that person, tell me why. And what they will try to do with as much effort as they possibly can is to discreetly do that so that the person does not know that it takes place, and it's done anonymously. So I'm talking about that here today. It ends up plugging, Ed's show and the episode and the movie and everything. But it also, hopefully it'll do for you what it did for me, is to get me to thinking like, wait a minute, how else can I give? Because Brian, as you know, in our business of financial services, we've got a gentleman by the name of June Delacruz, who he and his wife for the last 20 years have gathered items and gone down to Skid Row and given out items on Christmas Day.
Sure.
And I took some of that on along with some other people, and we did that a couple of years. And some people are more guarded than others. Some people are less guarded than others in the age of COVID. So haven't done anything like that. And so I've been thinking like, well, what can we do in that, in that vein, and not just say Christmas morning, but what can you do in the years to come? Because it's just like when someone loses a loved one, what I think about is two things: the condolences you can offer, and depending on your spirituality or religion, the prayer for that deceased one's peaceful journey, whatever the case might be. But that's the one thing. But the other thing I think about is, after life has gone back to what normal now is, and people don't have people around them as much, I try and think about them then and reach out at that point. And so with the same, by the same token, the holidays are upon us. What can you do throughout the year when people are not as conscious as to the needs that other people may have?
Sure. What's the name of the movie? The movie that
it's called American Underdog.
American Underdog. And that's out now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. By the way, somebody we ought to talk about. If somebody's going to create an opportunity for, our young adults and special needs folks to be able to live independently, those are people that we want to talk about. And again, I think that those are the kinds of things that we need to highlight and let other people know that this community is committed to making a difference in people's lives. I always talk about the idea that, parents of children with special needs, we get so focused on what's immediately in front of us. Is my child going to get through, we have speech therapy and occupational therapy and physical therapy and, learning how to do certain things. And is my child going to get through school successfully? Is my child going to get a job? Will my child live independently? For some, that's a possibility. For many, it may not be a possibility. So they're often focused on what's kind of immediately in front of them, not really thinking about, well, what happens down the road when I pass away? Is my child going to be taken care of and protected? And obviously that's the work that we do, is help people put those kinds of things in place. But more importantly, the idea that there is a community of people committed to making sure that when you make those plans or you start thinking about this, there's some place to go. There is a place. So I think we'd be fantastic to have her on the show and and be able to talk to them in some way and be able to promote what it is that they're doing, so other people know that there are phenomenal people out there. That's a great story. By the way, I haven't seen Ed's episode yet with him, and so I'm excited to watch that and be involved with that. I think that's amazing. Again, I thought you were going to talk about Jeff Levitan, another one of our mentors, who he himself has 2 children on the autism spectrum, and the commitment that he has to making a difference in the lives of those families that, again, that have children on the autism spectrum. And there are a lot of folks out there that are doing that. And as we look inward and sort of think about, like, or I should look to our own families about how can we bring, these things to light so that our families are thinking, our children are thinking about the impact that we can have out there on the world. I love the idea of walking into a restaurant. By the way, wouldn't that be a goal, to be financially successful and financially independent, that you can walk into a restaurant and say to your kids, okay, which family are we going to treat to dinner tonight? What an amazing thing to do.
Here's the thing. That's where I mentioned how natural it is to complicate it humanly. And I'm saying this to myself because I would have thought the same thing. But when you think about it, you could, if you literally did that and anonymously contributed $10 to somebody's bill, you know what I mean? Maybe that's all you could do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So where's the complication come in? You mean, does somebody would feel like they had to pay for a whole meal? You mean, or what do you mean?
Right. We need to think that we always think we have to have a certain amount of means and everything. Like, for instance, I would always, it'd be great to go through a drive-through at Starbucks or fast food, whatever. And you go, you know what? Here's $100 to pay for the next 5 meals or whatever have you, towards whoever's coming up behind me.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have that. Maybe here's $5. Yeah. That's for the person behind me. Here's $2. That's for maybe it's $1. That would probably be like, and when I'm telling you, I'm not catching you saying, oh, Brian, don't do that. Don't complicate it.
No, I get it.
I'm speaking to myself as well just now, because maybe you got 50 cents and maybe somebody will laugh. Who knows? But who cares? Be like, this 50 cents. This goes towards the 50 cents towards the total for whoever comes up behind me.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that. I got caught on. I'm again. Let me just say this. First of all, I'm part of the baby boomer generation. I'm on the tail end, so I'm not going to reveal my age to you. It's 58, but but I find myself intrigued by social media. I do a lot of stuff in the did a lot of stuff in the entertainment industry. So I'm intrigued by social media. And so I spend a little bit of time on TikTok, and I'm probably three times older than the average age on TikTok. But because of what I find interesting and because of those things that I like, the algorithm is put in place. I get a lot of feel good stories. Soldiers coming home from service, that always brings a tear to my eye. Basically, I find things that make me cry. I don't know why that's the thing, but now it's become the thing, right? Things that make me cry as I watch them. But thank you for putting up there, Shawn. I'm assuming that you're putting that our YouTube, the link to Ed Milet's interview with Kurt Warner. But let me finish this thought. I've noticed there was a gentleman. I want to say his name is Steve. I don't want to mess up his last name. I will get his name. But he had a delivery person bring him, deliver something to his house. And he said, let me ask you this. What was the last tip amount that you got? And the guy says, well, $2. And he says, okay, that's, I get it. And literally pulls out a wad of cash and hands it to the guy. And the guy's like, what? And he's like, yeah, no, I want you to have a good holiday. I want you to have a good Christmas. You're giving of yourself at a time of COVID, blah, blah, blah. And as he's talking, he pulls out I'm talking a wad of cash, you guys. I don't know how much money he was giving, but he was just like, and the guy's like, no, you can't be serious. Like, I don't deserve this. And he's like, of course you do. Everybody does. And as he's talking, he pulls out another. I would tell you, the stack of cash was this high. It was like a good 7-8 inches. Like it was a pretty big solid cash. And of course, the guy's crying. And I'm not saying that I was crying because, anyways, it was so amazing because he said, you don't understand that, like, I can actually take care of my children. I can actually, give my kids a good Christmas. And it's like, yeah, everybody should have that feeling. And as I went in, he has a YouTube page as well. And I know y'all are going to be mad at me. I'll have to put it in the comments afterwards to get his actual name. But he has several of these where he is in a position to give wads of cash. And I find that there are a lot of folks out there that just want to give back and let people know that your dreams are important. They're important to you. And that means that they're important to me. They're important to us. They're important to us as a society. If you think about people who had a dream that seemed outlandish at the time, if they had their dreams quashed, we wouldn't have Tesla vehicles or, these rockets that go to the moon or computers or iPhones. If people's dreams were crushed because somebody in an establishment or established role said that that's ridiculous, nobody's going to want that. Nobody's going to care about that. I'm dealing with this now in the world of NFTs. Oh, that's ridiculous. Like, who wants a digital image of right? I don't even know what that means. And yet there are people that have committed their lives to changing the world, and they have a dream. So this is a good time for us to think about dreams and hopes and use this time for the holiday to have gratitude, count your blessings, know that what you have, as Shawn said, whether it's $5 or 50 cents or $10, it may be nothing to you, but it's everything to somebody else. And this is the time to do it. Steven Shapiro. That's it. I thought it was Steven Shapiro, but I remember there being an S there. Thank you, Shawn Hall. Shawn Hall always does this for us. So if you put that up on the chat, Steven Shapiro is his name. It has a C in his last name, Shapiro with a C. If you're human and have a heartbeat, you're going to get teary eyed. I call them, the eye sweats. It's amazing. And what it says to me is that I am moved by the contribution that other people make to other folks. So thank you, Shawn. We put Steve Shapiro's YouTube channel up there where you're going to see many, many of these videos. And some of them you're like, why is the guy doing this? Like, I don't know why he does it, but I don't care why he's doing it or where the money comes from that has it, to do this. He's making a difference in the lives of the people around him that are doing simple tasks that sometimes get overlooked, that don't get seen, that don't get acknowledged, and that don't get noticed. But the reality is everybody is seen, everybody's noticed. When you're not here, your absence is noted. We tell people that all the time. Yes, it's important to show up, not just to show up, but it's when you don't, your absence is just as noticeable to us. And so if you look at the world from that perspective, and as we're getting to the end of our, that's funny, as we get to the end of our hour in this discussion. And by the way, we did not anticipate having this conversation. I always say empathy and love is the way to view the world. And if we all had empathy around the situation that people, that are in, we look at their situation and not understand what it is. Again, Kurt Warner's family walking in, I don't know what the family's up to, or what you think, or what strikes you as why that's a deserving family for us making a contribution. We don't know their situation, but if you can have some empathy as you look at their situation, you'll understand, that everybody's going through something. If you look through the world of, the lenses of love, the world will be a better place. And that's just kind of how we should, spend our time as we wrap up this year. Next week, we're going to talk about new stuff that Shawn and I are going to be doing in the year 2022 that we are excited about. We're excited for the special needs community. We're excited for all of you. We're excited for everybody to be involved in what we are doing in the year to come. But we'll talk about that next week as we wrap up. This week, our focus is on take this time with your family and your loved ones and whoever you're spending the holidays with, and take a moment and express your gratitude for each other, for one another, for things in your life. No matter where you are, there's, we always say that the world is doing things for you, not to you. And so, there's a lesson in all of this. There's an opportunity for us to grow as individuals. And so for those of you in our community, we love you and we are here for you and we support you, and know that there's a very large network of people that are here to protect you and your family. For those of you who participated today with us here on Facebook, thank you so much. Lori and Tammy and Joe and Gillian and, some of our friends who catch us regularly. We love you. Jordan, my daughter, is always watching our episodes. And I'm grateful for her and her contributions that she makes. And for all of you, wish you a very Merry Christmas and a happy holiday. And I love you. As I say that, I'm going to throw it to Shawn to wrap up our show. For everybody listening on our podcasts and on WSTXM radio, I can't wait to taste your guava treats and your tamales, Shawn. So with that, I'll hand it off to you to sign us out here.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in. As Brian mentioned, next week we're going to be talking about some of the things that we have planned for the coming year, but we'll also be talking about how you might go about goal setting for the coming year. And one of the things that I've learned in setting my own goals is to keep it very simple, extremely simple. Talk about maybe some of the concepts that I'm using to put those things in place, and try and as hard as possible to keep things simply. And with that, I'd like to simply thank all of you for tuning in. I'd like to thank the women in my life without whom I could not begin to even fathom being, the person I strive to be. And that would be my mom, Jan, and my amazing wife, Laura. And just remember that, somebody somewhere needs to know that you see them, needs to know that they're seen, needs to know that they're heard. And we want to thank you. And wherever you might be catching us, if you're watching us, we love you.
Awesome. Have a great week, everybody. Enjoy your holidays. We look forward to seeing you again next week on Just Two Dads. Oh, yeah, I was going to do that, wasn't I, Shawn? Next week on Just Two Dads.